Physics does not study nature. Physics does not study matter. Rather, physics studies mathematical models of nature. Greetings, this is Eugene the Philosopher, the greatest living philosopher after the unfortunate passing of Quentin Robert D. Nameland, who has been the greatest living philosopher before me. Let's talk about what physics is and isn't, alright? And Wikipedia gives us a definition, something like, physics is a scientific study of matter. And for example, in my country, the 7th grade textbook, the very first year when people start studying physics, says physics studies nature, period. So unfortunately, I don't think any of these definitions is correct fundamentally, and let's talk about this a little bit. So I've actually ran a poll before doing this video. Like, I've asked my viewers and just like friends on Facebook, like, what do you think physics studies? And I've got quite a lot of results, not results, like replies. I'll put them at the end of the video during the outro music, so you can check them out if you wish. There was only one answer which I was really satisfied with. It was by Neil Creamer. So shout out to you. And there was really one key word that I wanted to hear to, I'm sorry. Not even to hear, or to read rather, and this word was models. So my point in this video would be that no, physics does not study nature, as our 7th grade textbook says, and no, physics does not study matter, as Wikipedia says. Rather, physics studies models of nature, or models of matter, or if you wish, even like mathematical models of nature, and mathematical models of matter. And that's a big deal, actually. It's a big difference. Like, when people say physics studies nature or matter, they assume that whatever like physical theory we have currently, or whatever we may come up with, actually is truth. Like, we've kind of, you know, like penetrated the world's secrets and grasped the actual truth, right? Whereas in reality, it's just a way for us to talk to each other about what, like, how the world works, you know? And it's just a model. It's just a way of telling this story, if you wish. So, a long time ago, I've had this video, Nature of Knowledge. I'm going to link it in the description, where I say that essentially any knowledge that we can have is just a bunch of stories that we tell each other about the world. And again, so this is just a particular case of this, where physics is, like physical knowledge, is essentially a bunch of models that we use to describe the world, whether it is just verbally, it's not necessarily mathematical, by the way, just verbally, you know, like qualitatively, or again, mathematically, like numerically, quantitatively, right? So yeah, physics is just a bunch of models, where physical models are the way for us to tell the stories about the world in this particular narrow physical sense, all right? That's what I'm talking about. And it's a big difference. Why? Well, because again, see my video, Cool Way to Save Faith and Marriage, something like that, where I talk about Galileo's curse. I have also a video about Galileo, by the way, where I talk about, like, what is Galileo's curse? Well, it's my term, all right? I call it mistaking the model of nature with nature itself. So, in case you don't know, the only problem Inquisition had with Galileo and heliocentric model was that Galileo kept saying that heliocentrism is the truth, whereas Inquisition insisted that no, it's not the truth, it's just a model of the world. Right? So I'm the inquisitor in this respect. I'm on the same position as all of the philosophy of science, by the way, currently at the very least. So yeah, and Galileo was super arrogant. He kept insisting, no, this is not a model, this is the truth. So this is literally the only reason, like, he got into trouble with the church. Like, the church had nothing against heliocentrism per se. It's just that they were saying it's just a model. And now we know that they were correct, actually, right? So yeah, this is pretty much it. That's what I wanted to talk about in this video. And by the way, this collective Demystify Science, right? Michael and Anastasia, they have this expression which I really liked. This confusing the map for the terrain, or something like that they use. So the map is our model, right? Where the terrain is the actual, you know, reality, nature, the world, the matter, whatever you want to call it. And we keep confusing the map for the terrain. We keep thinking that physics uncovers the actual world, whereas physics just concocts a model which kind of resembling the world in some respects, right? Is resembling the world. So whether it is possible or not to build a physical theory without using any models, I would claim it's not possible, because again, fundamentally, any knowledge is just, you know, a bunch of stories, and a physical way of telling stories, I mean physical in terms of physics, not physical in any other respect. So the way physics tells its stories, it's just by building models of actual phenomena or objects, all right? And therefore, you cannot escape this model dependence. It's not just model dependence. It's, again, the models are the only thing that physics studies. Like, physics produces models and then studies them in more detail. Studies the models in more detail. That's essentially like 99.9% of all the physical activity, again, in the sense of physics, not physical activity as something else. All right? So the only thing the only like theory, I guess, or approach which came kind of to the limit of the modeling itself would be Wolfram's approach. Stephen Wolfram, again, watch my video about his model. Again, no pun intended. Again, I would claim it's still a model that he has, all right? He has this sort of idea of procedural generation of physical phenomena, if you wish. I mean, I'm kind of oversimplifying, obviously, so watch the video if you want more details, all right? So, and I also am wondering, like, kind of going into a meta level. So we're talking about like physics is about models of, you know, matter or nature or whatever you want to call it. And I'm wondering how psychic phenomena, for example, would fit into Wolfram's model, because I have a suspicion they simply don't, you know. And so in this respect, Wolfram's model, it may be better. It may be are very important words here, because I'm not convinced yet. It may be better than others, but it's still a physical model with all of its limitations, i.e. ignoring one half of the world, what I call the world of meaning, right? Watch my video about perpendicular worlds, where I claim that there is a world of physics and the world of meaning, which is perpendicular to it, right? They cross in some places, for example, living beings like you and I, but they are fundamentally different, and physics only deals with basically one half of whatever we can perceive. Like, we have a whole psychic world which physics cannot even deal with. Again, physics deals with mathematical models of matter or nature, if you wish, and you can't exactly mathematize psychic experiences, right? Or at least would be very hard to do so. And again, we're dealing with things like reproducibility, whereas again, psychic experiences are individual and unique, and therefore not reproducible, etc., etc. I mean, maybe there is an aspect of them which is reproducible, but that is a completely different discussion. We're talking about physics in this particular video, right? So this idea, I would claim that physics deals with models of matter or nature, whatever you prefer, is so liberating, actually. Like, I've been thinking about it a lot in the recent few weeks. And like, this is probably the most liberating idea I've had in the last, I don't know, a year maybe. So, because, like, well, first of all, it kind of, you no longer have to, like, really put a lot of attention into what people are saying, right? So whatever people can come up with in terms of physical models is exactly that. It's just a model, all right? You can ignore it, actually. Like, yes, certain models may allow us to do something. Not all, by the way. Like, most of the physical models, especially if you look at theoretical physics of present day, it's absolute garbage. Like, you cannot do anything, right? But, however, some models may allow us to do something useful, right? It may give us some leverage over, again, the world, the nature, whatever you want to call it. Anyway, it's just a model, okay? Like, if it's useful, all right, you may use it. Again, it's useful. That's the root of this word, right? Like, if you have a hammer, it's useful. You can hit nails with it, but you don't say that the hammer is some fundamental, like, you know, divine thing, right? It's just a tool. So a physical model is just a tool, like a hammer, right? And another point is that any number of models of the same thing, of the same phenomenon, may exist. Like again, a proverbial example would be like a theory of light. We have a model that the light is waves. We have a model that the light is particles. They are intrinsically contradictory, and people acknowledge this. It's called wave corpuscular, like, okay, in English it's called wave-particle dualism, right? So sometimes light behaves as waves, sometimes it behaves as particles. What is it, I'm asking you, if not an acknowledgement of what I've just told you, that sometimes one model works good, sometimes another model works good, but what light is fundamentally, like, we don't know. It's not the question that physics works with, you know? Physics tries to build a model that works. So if a wave model works, then we may assume that the light is a wave. If a particle model works, we may assume that the light is a particle. What it is in reality, on like the most fundamental level, ontological, you know, like divine, sort of world of ideas type of level, we just cannot know, probably. I mean, unless, again, you assume there is God and blah, 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 blah. Watch my video, like, Science Has a Big Problem, Part 2, where I talk about this specifically. So if you believe in God, of course, you may hope that you can actually grasp, like, the lowermost level of existence, of reality, of being, of whatever, you know. If you don't believe in God, unfortunately, you have to concede. You have to say, all right, like, we're just dealing with models. One model sometimes better, sometimes the other model is better. They may be, you know, mutually exclusive even, right? Just like the particle and the wave. But who cares, ultimately? Yeah. And it can, like, from this standpoint, you can see that whatever progress we have in terms of, like, theories, in terms of models, really, it's just an illusion for the most part, right? When, for example, we say there is a scientific revolution, what does it mean? It means just one model was replaced with another model, right? But it's not closer to the truth, this other model, necessarily at least, right? It's maybe more useful to our current level of understanding and engineering and like how our society is currently developing. Like maybe this model is kind of more useful for us, right? But then a renaissance, like 100 years later, may happen with the previous model that we've already discarded. Again, the theory of light is another example. Like, we had pretty much everyone believe that light is a bunch of particles in 17th century. There were outliers like Huygens and other people like that, until the beginning of 19th century, where we had the interference experiments and things like that. Then, for 100 years, people believed that light is waves. And then, again, we kind of conceded that it's kind of both, right? So, yeah. Yeah, so we have a certain illusion of progress in this respect, right? And, yeah, and essentially you end up with some agnosticism, I would say, in this respect, that the world, unless, again, you believe in God. If you believe in God, there's no problem. Like, you can think that, well, God loves me, and therefore God will allow me to know the world as it actually is, right? If you don't believe in God, you have no guarantee that you can know anything about the world at all. Like, it's a big miracle that anything works at all, right? Numbers, for example. Like, we're talking about the mathematical models of nature. Well, watch my video about numbers, how many problems we have on this front, so to speak. And by the way, mathematics, again, it's just a language, right? So, physics as a way of utilizing or developing mathematical models of matter. Well, mathematical here is just a language. Like, we just use the language of mathematics, the symbolic language. We can perfectly fine use verbal language for, again, qualitative analysis, just I've elucidated at the very beginning of this video. All right. Anyway, this way or another, as I've said, we're missing one half of reality at the very least, the world of meaning, as I call it. Like, of course, we have a certain push within, let's say, a physics community, people who work with information theory. They're saying, okay, information is really important. It's just as important as mass and energy. In fact, you can actually derive mass, energy, information equivalence, right? Through the Landauer's principle. But however, it's still not meaning. Information is just a, again, quantitative measure of something. But meaning is always qualitative, right? So a bit of info does not convey the meaning it has. A bit, I mean literally a bit, 0 or 1, right? For example, you can answer the question, does God exist, with a single bit? But it's like in terms of information theory, it's nothing. It's just 1 bit. I mean, it's so small, right? But the answer to this question is pretty important. You would probably agree. It conveys it's probably the most important bit in the universe, right? And whether God exists or not, 0 or 1. So yeah, at least for human beings, of course, etc., etc. So yeah, hopefully I've been able to convey you my message and give you a couple of examples that really there was one example, but I can give you as many as you like, actually. Just ask me in the comments, right? So keep in mind we have this I'll probably screenshot the answers and you'll see them at the end during the outro. And for now we'll just conclude. So what have we talked about in this video? That no, physics does not study nature. Physics does not study matter. Rather, physics studies mathematical models of nature or mathematical models of matter. There you go. And it's a big difference. And unless you see it, you fall into this Galileo's curse, right? You're confusing the map for the terrain. You're mistaking the model for actual reality. And it's at least naive, perhaps arrogant, but overall, it's just stupid. All right? Thank you for watching. The eons are closing. If you wish to support me, please consider joining my Patreon. That is patreon.com/philosopher. See the link in the description. Or if you have a scientific theory of your own and you'd like my help in developing it, please join my alternative science coaching program, also available through Patreon.